Hello, my friends. It is finally another month of reading, so it is time to do a reading wrap up. I feel like May was a really good reading month for me. I ended up reading 18 books for a grand total of 6,627 pages in 1 month. That is so crazy. Of those 18 books, I had 8 5-star reads, which is actually incredible. I don't think I've ever read that many 5-star reads. I think I just had a really high quality month. My average rating for this month was 4.185. So I feel like that's just a really good month. I'm already 1 week into June and I don't know that this month is going as well as last month, but that's okay. I'm super excited to share all of the books that I read this month. Hopefully some of these will give you some more books to add to your TBR. If I rated something low, that is a book that you love. Just want to say these are totally my opinions, which are formed by my own biases, my likes and dislikes, just purely rating on my own enjoyment, and that just has a lot of factors.
So we can still be friends if you disagree with my ratings.
I think the way that it makes the most sense to me is to just go through the books in the order of how I read them. Unless I reach something that's in the same series as a book that I've already read this month, then I'll just kind of go that way. But let's just jump right into it. Starting off so strong, the first book that I read in May that I absolutely loved was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I don't have the dust jacket on this because I just didn't love it. I feel like this is such a beautiful book and it didn't need the dust jacket that it had on it. I really enjoyed this book. This book is one of those that really intimidated me because you either love it or you hate it, I feel like. This book was about a girl who was just struggling with a life that she knew was laid out for her. It was early 1700s in France, and she was about to be married off to a guy that she didn't love who already had kids, and she just didn't want that life for herself. So she went out and was praying and trying to give gifts to the gods. She'd always been warned that she shouldn't pray to the gods that come out in the night, but she was just in desperation to not have to go to marry this man. The sun set and she ended up making a deal with a god of the night. And she makes a deal so that she can essentially live forever. The caveat that she didn't realize until after she made the deal, which was that nobody would ever remember her. So when she tries to go back and talk to her parents, they don't remember her. And she just continues throughout history all the way up until the present day, and no one can remember her. And she has these really hard things happen to her. She gets hurt, she goes hungry, she ends up having to be in some really terrible positions just to survive, which is kind of a weird way to say it because again, she doesn't die, but the god of the night basically tells her that whenever she wants it to be over, he'll come and take her soul as payment. But she's just very stubborn and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. So even when she's having a hard time, she just refuses to give in. And she ends up finding somebody in the present day after 300 years who remembers her. This is their story, this is her story, this is his story, and it's just so beautiful. I feel like V. Schwab's writing is absolutely incredible, and it has made me want to devour every single book by her. I ended up giving this book a 4.75 stars. I really had to sit and marinate on that. I think the only thing that kept it from being a 5-star read is I felt like I didn't enjoy the paragraphs that were just from our male main character's perspective. When it was just talking about his life and how he got to where he was, I just didn't care about it as much as I cared about Addie's life. But when it was Addie's chapters, I ate it up. And I ate up the chapters where they were together too. I just didn't love his story as much, if that makes sense. But it's so good. It's something that I really feel like everybody should just take off their TBR. I feel like it's on so many TBRs and they haven't gotten to it. Super good. Next book I read, I've actually loaned out to 2 friends since I read it, and that is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't feel like I'd ever read anything like it. It is one of the most beautiful books I feel like I've bought to date as well, so I am so excited to get it back and be able to display it on my shelf. It's very unique. It's a mystery. It's also a story of family. It's a single dad and he is struggling raising his kids and they just all need different things. And he is currently living with them on an island in the middle of nowhere where there's this big seed bank where seeds are kept
in case the world goes to heck.
Some big natural disaster happens and humans need to start over from scratch with all of the different seeds of the planet, I guess. They're all kept here and so he cares for them, and his kids just love the island and they're very different. And one day a woman washes ashore, and this isn't a place that you really just happen upon, so there's lots of questions about why she's here, what she's looking for. Is she there for good reasons? Is she there for bad reasons? And you get this beautiful haunting story that is told from the perspectives of the dad, his 3 different kids, and the woman. I really can't say more than that because it would be spoiling the book, and one thing about me is I'm never going to spoil a book on my channel. I really just encourage you to read it. I thought it was incredible. It felt very important because it talked a lot about conservation, and that's not really a topic that I think about very often in my daily life, just in my current phase of life that I'm at, and it really got me thinking about that and how important it is. The ending just was so like gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, but also very satisfying. Like it felt like it needed to happen, and I just really enjoyed this book, so I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book I read this month was my first 5-star read, and that was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I loved this book. I loved it so much. I couldn't get enough of it. It's one of those ones that I felt like I had to annotate. Like I knew in the beginning that this was going to be one that I loved. First of all, this is the UK paperback, and I just love like the metallic writing. This is also one of my favorite covers for contemporary romance, and I just saw author released the cover of the next book in the series, and it is stunning. I'm so excited to continue in this series. This book is for fans of Sleepless in Seattle. One of our main characters, Aiden, he is a host for a late night radio show. People call in for advice about their love life, and he's just getting very jaded just because of some experiences that he has had just in his life and with his parents. He has a parent who has been terminally ill multiple times. And so that's just kind of really made him question his job, question whether love is worth the pain it causes. And then we have Lucy, who is a single mom. She thinks she's doing just fine, just raising her daughter and doesn't need anything else, but her daughter ends up calling in to this radio station and asking Aiden for some advice for her mom. She really wants her to get back out there and thinks that she is missing something in the love department. Lucy becomes a fan favorite and ends up just like coming on the show a lot, and the show like ends up sponsoring her dates and things like that. And just through it all, Aiden and Lucy just end up connecting. And the thing is, BK Borison wrote this for someone, and it was for me because I ate it up and I just absolutely love it. So this book was 5 stars. And you guys know, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. A book about a single parent, I'm gonna eat it up every time, but specifically this one, it was just so good, and it just hit all the points that I wanted, which is why I ended up rating it 5 stars. The next 2 books that I read were volumes 2 and 3 in the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. You can read these books on Kindle Unlimited, and I've just been borrowing them from a friend. I've kind of been making a rule for myself that if a book is on Kindle Unlimited, or if I can borrow it from a friend immediately, then I'm not gonna buy it. However, the thing is, I'm loving this series, and I am sad that I don't have copies of my own. So eventually I would like to buy all the books in this series. I've talked about this series a lot, so I'm not going to really talk much more about it, but it's a Regency era historical fiction. It's told in the point of view of this just very witty, funny, lovable character. I love her, and I'm so excited to see the love story that is coming and just like continue to read about her adventures. And I rated both of these 5 stars. These are very short books. They're so easy to read. They kind of gave me Bridgerton vibes, which I absolutely loved. I don't know how else to describe it but that. It's like if you love Bridgerton and if you love the wittiness of Pride and Prejudice, you'll love these books. The next book I read was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I feel like you're gonna hear me say this a lot, but this is my first book that I've read by this author. I've been wanting to get into Kristen Hanna books for a while. I own a few of them, but this is the only one I've read so far. I just feel like this book changed my brain chemistry. It was incredible. It was heavy, and it was written about a time period that I don't normally gravitate towards, but it was just so beautifully written, and I just absolutely fell in love with this book. And I've also talked about this in a recent reading vlog, which you should definitely go back and watch. All I'm gonna say is that this is a book that I wish I could read again for the first time. This is a book that I feel like I will talk about and recommend forever. This is a book that spans generations, spans genders, spans interests. This book is incredible, and I would be shocked if it's not a classic one day. So there's no shock that I gave this book 5 stars. If we're just talking about how incredibly written this is, then this would have been my top read for May. Next, I read the first 2 books in the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver. I read Flawless and Hopeless. It's not called Hopeless, it's called Heartless. I feel like I don't have that much to say about this series. It's very, very hyped on booktok, and I think it's just one of those books that is written for a specific kind of reader. For me, it was like one of those things that I enjoyed, but it's not really something that I'm running to read the next book. If I never finish the series, I don't think that'll make much of an impact on me. I liked the love stories. For me, it just had a level of spice that I don't particularly prefer. I like lots of slow burn and tension without that, and if we have that, I like it to be like in the end and just like somewhat minimal. I rated these books in the 3-star range. I gave Flawless a 3 out of 5 stars, and I gave Hopeless, I said it again, Heartless a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Do again love a single dad like nanny trope. The next book that I read, I tandem read this and listened to it, was a memoir. I try to read at least one memoir every month, and that was The Magnolia Story by Chip and Joanna Gaines. I gave this book 4 stars just purely out of the enjoyment. I feel like this book is really relevant to the point I'm at in my life. People who would enjoy this book are, I feel like, young parents. If you're going through any type of like struggles in your careers or just like with finances, this was a story of 2 people who just really had a vision for their lives and just went after it and made things happen and recognized like the hand of God in their lives, and I just really appreciated that. The next book that I read is another first for me as far as the author. I've really been wanting to read Jessa Hastings books, and I was able to get my hands on The Conditions of Will. Now, most people say do not read this book first because there's Easter eggs for the Magnolia Park series. I knew I wanted to order the UK covers, and they just take a lot longer to get here, but The Conditions of Will cover is just sold just like this in the US, and it's gorgeous. And so I read this book. I absolutely loved it. I devoured it. If there's one thing about me, I love reading about toxic families / complicated family dynamics. I love reading about sibling relationships, and this had all of that. I just loved it. One thing in particular is just Jessa Hastings' writing. It's so incredible. Again, I mentioned this one in a reading vlog. I really enjoy the way that she writes about a character's like inner monologue. I enjoy the way that she's able to put feelings to paper in just such a relatable way that's so just understandable. Loved this book. So excited to continue on with Jessa Hastings' writing. I think my kids are about to wake up from a nap. Gotta speed this up. Did I end up saying that I rated this 5 stars? Well, I did if I didn't. Next is a total 180. I ended up going into Crash Landing on You by Annie McQuaid. But I did end up going 60% of this book. I just had to DNF it, and I am not a big DNFer. And it kills me to say this because I think this might be a debut for this author. I just didn't connect with the writing style. I was a little bit confused by some of the character development. For me, some of the things that were said by certain characters just didn't match their personality, didn't match their experience. Hopefully that's making sense. There just were times where I felt like the dialogue didn't feel authentic to the characters themselves. The writing just didn't do it for me. But if any of you read it and loved it, like I'd love to hear about your experience with it. Next, we're jumping into another 5-star read, which was The Wedding People. I really loved this book. Go into this book reading the trigger warnings first. It will not be for everybody. Some of the triggers in this book are the main character is planning to unalive herself as she goes on this last vacation. There's also some infertility triggers in this. Very, very, very heavy topics. It's not going to be for everybody, but this book was for me 1000%. I just got it. I thought it was really beautifully told. I thought it was a good story of friendships, of learning to go after what makes you happy instead of what you think you should be doing or what everyone else expects of you. It was just a really beautiful book. This is another one that I covered in my reading vlog in case you want to hear a little bit more about that. I feel like I keep saying that, but I guess I must have just read so many books in that week of reading that that's just how it worked. The next book I read is actually in my stack to unhaul, and that is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I was really disappointed because when I read the back of this, I absolutely thought it sounded just incredible. It's about a girl who is essentially a big planner. Like she planned the job she was gonna have. She's been dating the same guy. They planned exactly after how many years they were gonna get married, engaged, and all this stuff. And one day when he finally proposes, like she knew he was going to, she went to sleep and she woke up 5 years in the future. She spends an hour there with a different man and in a different apartment, in a different life. She's still her, and she cannot stop thinking about that hour, and she can't stop thinking about that man that she was with. I just think maybe I went into this with the wrong expectations. I was really thinking this was going to be a romance, and while there were some romance elements, I would not say that this is a romance book. I would much more say this is literary fiction. I just felt like this book was kind of a downer, and it just never picked up after that. I didn't like how it was handled when she finally was 5 years in the future and experienced that memory that she had been thinking about. I just didn't love it. Like, I just wouldn't recommend this to anybody. I just felt that it was depressing, and I know some people love it. I felt like I kept reading because I was like, surely it's going to get more positive. Surely it's going to get better. Surely I'm at least going to be satisfied with the ending. Not all the books I read are positive. Does that make sense? Like, there are 2 books I read this month, The Great Alone and Wild Dark Shore, that had hard endings. They felt necessary and they felt right, and I just didn't feel that way about this book. I'm giving this book a 2.75 stars. I still feel like this author definitely has promise, and I want to read more by her, tentatively. But yeah, this is going in an unhaul. I just will never read this book again, and I don't think I'll ever really loan it to anybody either. The next book I read is my most anticipated read of 2025, and that is The Night and the Moth. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed the story. If there's one thing about Rachel Gillig's writing, it's that it's going to get me every time. Gothic fantasy magic system is one that consists of divination, and our main character is a diviner who sees visions from the gods, and she ends up going on a quest to find the other diviners who disappear one by one. She ends up joining up with just like this ragtag group, one of which is a king, one of which is a knight, and one of which is a soldier. Even though they're not really on this quest for the same thing, they can benefit from each other, and so because she's been a diviner and she's seen as just like almost like a religious figure, this is her first time being outside and not necessarily treated like she's holy and all of this stuff, and so she just learns that maybe the world isn't exactly what she thought it was or what she was told that it was. A character who kind of goes through an awakening and realizes that maybe what she was raised to believe isn't right and isn't what's best for her. One of the things I loved the most was the sidekick. He was a gargoyle. I think he is my favorite sidekick of all time. He would say these popular phrases and say them wrong, but also say these things that were just like really profound, and I just loved his character. The next book I read was Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I ended up also giving this book 4.5 stars, but for different reasons. This book is really long, like a lot happens. There's multiple settings in this book, but I really enjoyed Devney Perry's descriptions. I really bought into the story. I think her world building was really, really good. This book is about a princess and a monster hunter and just a world that is plagued by monsters, but she's just learning things along the way that maybe everything is not as it seems. You're kind of trying to figure out who the love interest is in this book. There's the prince that she's betrothed to, and then there is the monster hunter who they call the guardian. I feel like just the concept was really cool, like all of the different monsters that the people had to protect against, just the storyline. I thought it was really good. It did drag on at times, I felt, but the ending of this book was incredible and has me sat for the next book, and I feel like that's what ended up pushing it to 4.5 stars. The next 2 books I read is a duology that I'm giving each book in the series 5 stars, and that is the Six of Crows duology, so Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. These books are absolutely incredible. I just think for me, this is god tier fantasy, this is god tier fiction. I just think that Leigh Bardugo is an absolute genius for the way that she was able to weave a story in each one of these books that is so complicated and yet so easy to understand. We have 6 different characters, which is this group that is working together to perform a heist, to break somebody out of a place that no one has ever been broken out of. She did a really good job at giving backstories to each of these characters in a way that I was at the edge of my seat. I wanted to know more. I feel like normally backstories can get incredibly tedious and just boring, but I wanted more. I wanted even more of all of these characters. I wanted more of their stories, and I just absolutely loved them. And these books also have some love stories within them that I just loved, and I just will think about them for a long time. This is a series that I will now recommend to everybody, and again, both of these got 5 stars. The last book that I read in May is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a book that really, really, really intimidated me. I've heard such amazing things about Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've also heard very mixed things about this book. The premise is really, really interesting. So this entire book is jumping back between timelines, but one of the timelines is 24 hours. We're getting a bunch of different perspectives of 24 hours where these siblings are hosting this party they always host. You end up getting a lot of different perspectives of people at this party and just like knowing what happens, figuring out a lot of different storylines that are happening at this party, and also you're getting the timeline of parents of these 4 siblings, how they met, how their relationship progressed, and what kind of an environment these kids grew up in. I did pretty much binge this book. Like, I was very interested the entire way through. Writing, I feel like, was incredible. I just felt like it wasn't very relatable to me, and that's okay. But I have to give Taylor Jenkins Reid her props. I do think that this book is a really good book. It is one that I would recommend. I would recommend it to specific people though. So if you're the eldest sibling or a sibling who has been responsible for your younger siblings for a good part of your childhood, I really think this book is for you, especially if you have parents that you felt like you had to step in for. This book is an ode to the eldest sibling. There was quite a bit of infidelity in this book, which is one thing that I really don't like to read about. It was important to the storyline, and so see why it was there. I just think maybe that's something that impacted my reading experience, but I would be really interested to hear from other people who've read this book and what you've thought about it if you have read it. I still do think if people ask me if I would recommend this book, again, like I think it was really well written and it's an interesting read. I just think it's written for a certain type of person, and so even though I would recommend it, I think enjoyment levels would vary, if that makes sense. Now I'm going to pull all the books off of the shelf that I did read and see what it looks like all together. Okay, first time caller. Okay, let's see my other one. Okay, so this is all of the physical books I have currently that I read this month. I feel like it was a really good reading month, and I feel like this month was very telling of books that I enjoy and books that I don't enjoy. So I feel like I really appreciated it because of that. But that is it for my May reading wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was so fun for me to film. I feel like it was such a good reading month, and I cannot wait to see what June's reading month is gonna be like. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. You're a real one. Really appreciate you, and I will see you guys in my next video.